So there's a chance that this video is gonna go off on a really long tangent and it might not really make sense, but I wanted to make a video about the end of Evangelion for quite a while, but just due to work and just the general stress, I've been putting it off. Um, like to be honest, it's procrastination for sure, right? But today I've had a little bit more time and energy to invest into producing this video. So I don't exactly want to talk exactly about whether End of Evangelion is good or not, because there's already been a lot of videos about that. Who the videos are probably much better than how I could produce, and there's not really much for me to add. So I'm just going to focus on one aspect about the end of Evangelion that was really fascinating to me, something that I feel like people in the modern age deal with that quite a lot. And even in that time that the film came out, which is like 1997, so that was when the end of Evangelion came out, right? But 1997, 98, like around that time, I forgot exactly the date, but anyways, it's before the 2000s, all right? So there was this message within the movie about getting out from escapism, because the fans of the show, they started being really upset and harassing the creator of the show, Hideo Anno. I'm not sure if I pronounce his name correctly. Just forgive me. I'm not Japanese. I don't speak Japanese. Um, so yeah. Anyways, he received a lot of harassment and death threats because the fans of the show did not like the way that the show ended, right? And when you really look into it, who are these fans, anyways, right? And Hideaki Anno goes into this very deep deconstruction about fan culture and just people who watch anime and engage in anime within the film End of Evangelion. And it's a very deep critique about how these fans are not really interested or understand the real world. They don't understand the real world, like things that are going on. They don't understand how to socialize. They especially don't know how to talk to women. And because of that, it's that negative perception really affects the the people's lives. It not just affects the creator of the show, but also affects the fan. You know, so this ending is just a whole deconstruction that goes on about how escapism is not good for you. Um, yeah, I've had a lot of different thoughts about this after I watched the film and also the show. It definitely struck a chord with me because I think I definitely dealt with this kind of thing that goes on where you're not really understanding the real world and you go into all this escapism, because I think it's not just me but a lot of people in my generation have not really been able to live in the real world and have gone into this escapism. And the movie really criticizes that, but I really feel like it's not really the cause, it's more of the symptom of the society that has been formed So you could ask why that is, you know. Is it because of technology? Is it because people have it so good, so they don't really have to interact with people, so they just go deep into this technology? Um, See, there's no easy solutions, but what I think, at least from what I can see in my personal opinion, is for one, the culture that existed back in the day, maybe before the end of Evangelion and Neon Genesis Evangelion came out, was that people had no choice but to interact with each other, because the society was structured in a way that people had to interact with each other. There's no choice, all right? So the society was structured in a different way, and even if you are kind of socially anxious, shy, um, where I don't really want to throw around this word, but autistic, right? You still had to interact with people and be part of the society, right? But as technology developed and as the culture shifted to be more um, different, all right, more progressive, more um, you don't really have to interact with people. That's what I'm getting at, right? We became more isolated, but people still needed that connection with each other, right? And they didn't really know how to get that, so they went into this escapism. Why did this escapism even form in the first place? Because people wanted to make money. They knew they could make money from it. They knew they could profit off of it. So they made more and more and more of these content, and they did profit off of it, right? There's someone making money from that, right? So rather than blaming people who engage in it, I think it's more fair to criticize the overall system. I'm not really saying it's because of capitalism, you know, because I don't want to be that kind of guy who is like um, going on this rant about how capitalism is bad and it's the worst thing in the world. I don't want to go on that rant, you know, because that's not really going to solve the problem either by going on this rant. Technology will progress no matter what, right? There's always going to be people who are going to find ways, whether the society is capitalist or communist or whatever, right? Um, I'm saying that the common person, the person who doesn't really have that much power, he's not going to be able to control those kinds of things. You know, he doesn't have a choice but to engage in these kinds of um, escapist means. And escapism has existed all throughout time. It's not just in 1990s or right now where you got social media and like video games and um, films, social media content, and people just deciding they don't want to engage in society. All right. Um, so yeah, rather than seeing escapism as bad and you shouldn't engage in it and you should come out into the real world and you should touch grass, I think a more fair assessment is, you know, what are the tools for that kind of person after he gets out of that escapism? Is there any tools for that person? Does he have a ability to engage with people in a reasonable way without being shamed and mocked and once again being isolated back into this escapism? Is there any tools for that? Like, I personally don't really see that, because a lot of these tools, let's be honest, it's for people who never really needed the escapism in the first place, right? The people who needed escapism the most are people who are um, let's say, neurodivergent, people who are already marginalized. They don't really have a choice. They don't really have much, outlets for them. They're the ones who go into um, this kind of escapism, whether it's video games, social media, movies, um, you know, the worst case scenario, drugs, and different sorts of addictions, right? Um, what support are they getting? You know, um, and people who have different types of work, let's say like filmmakers and artistic people. What other types of outlets do they have, right? Um, and um, people like George Lucas and Hideaki Anno, you know, what did they do to get out of that? They produced more films and they became rich, and then they were able to do things that they wanted, and they didn't really have to rely on these so-called escapism because they already have a business. They can make money from it, right? What about all the others who are not successful? They got to go back into this escapism. So I think that's something that I wanted to point out. Once I watched End of Evangelion, I thought that was a great movie, and I really agreed with the escapism as bad message. But it's also like kind of narrow in its approach. It doesn't solve the problem. That's all I'm saying. Just because you solve the escapism problem and people don't, like, sorry, they're not solving the escapism problem. They're just saying, hey, don't engage in escapism. And then what else do they got? They got nothing. Even in the movie, he comes out and it's a barren wasteland. He got absolutely nothing there. He's with Asuka, who hates him, right? So how many people are there existing that actually have the patience to understand people who are a little different and neurodivergent or shy? They don't really want to interact with people that much, and they they got their own way of living, and they're tired of trying to appease and please people who are just unwilling to understand people from a different style, like not everyone wants to um, please people and um, be in a certain box, fit into a certain box in terms of society's expectations, and they really gotta have a different outlet and at least a certain another box where they could thrive. They could have their own community because yeah, sure, at the end of the day, humans are, no matter what happens, they do need community. Even if they're neurodivergent or different, they do need that community bonding. They do need the respect. They do need um, a romantic partner, let's say, because that's all part of life. Everyone needs it. Everyone needs that kind of way to grow and need that outlet. And it's gets really tiring then when they're put into this and forced into this box that they were never really meant to be part of, and it's really important to at least have that understanding, um, and just being able to listen to people that are not the same as you. How many people are willing to do that? It's very few, right? That's the truth, man. That's really the truth. And that's why it's really not the answer to be like, hey, don't go into escapism, just go out into the real world. Why the fuck do you think people went into the escapism in the first place? Because the real world does not accept them. Right? The real world does not want to listen to them or understand them or care about them. Um, or when they do, they have a false notion that they're just like them, which is not really the case. You know, people, not everyone needs tons and tons of friends. Some people just need a few friends, a partner, small community, just a bunch of activities, and that's it. Some people need a lot of different people, a lot of different friends, and that's how they are, and that's also valid. But don't try to put everyone into the same box, because that is not gonna work. All right, even within this two different things that I mentioned, there's different middle ground things. There can be people who are, they need a small group of people the at certain times, and they need a large group of people at another time, right? That's how people are. So I think there's a lot of nuance that I think people really could consider. But even if I say these things, I don't think it's gonna solve any problems. People are still gonna not really understand the nuance in this, and they're not really gonna change. And it's gonna keep continuing with the problem. So yeah. But I do wanted to point out this thing, and I did, after watching End of Evangelion and really considering it and really understanding it and putting a lot of thought. I'm glad that I did not make a video on End of Evangelion immediately, because I really needed that time to think about all these things, and I really wanted to make a video about this whole topic, really. And yeah, I'm glad I've made this video. So please let me know your thoughts, whether this makes sense. And definitely, this is outside of the scope of films. I do understand that, but at the same time, like, films are conveying stories that are real, about real people. So that's why I've had to really make sure to make this video, even though this channel is kind of for film reviews, etc. Yeah, that's why I made this video. Just a bonus, I did watch Sinners once again on IMAX finally, because that movie got previewed in Hong Kong, and I loved it. It was a great experience. I loved the IMAX format presented with the film, because of course the film was shot on real IMAX cameras and 70mm. So I really loved the film overall. I understood more of the film, and I liked it. So yeah, that's it. I'm not really sure whether I'm gonna make a video on that separately, but yeah, this is the bonus. Do watch the movie if you haven't. So yeah, this is what I wanted to make about End of Evangelion. So let me know your thoughts. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.